Hi, my name's Dayle Adams of Planning Ahead of Time, and on this week's Pat Chat, I'm speaking with Stephen Garrett, the creator of the Seven Languages of Sorrow, and Scot Harris, the creator of Tarc The Robot. Now, we created a book called Tarc and the Grieving Children. We all grieve differently, and it was written by Lorna Vyse, illustrated by Scot Harris, project managed by me. And it was featuring The Seven Languages of Sorrow by Stephen Garrett. So we thought we'd have a little chat about it and tell you about the book. So, Stephen, starting with you, why and where did you create Seven Languages of Sorrow? Because it's great.
Yeah, it's over in North America, people don't grieve very well. We're grief illiterate. My dad was grief illiterate. I was grief illiterate, and it gets passed down from family to family. And I just thought, no, this is not working. And I don't want my kids to be grief illiterate. So in my grief counseling work, I started to notice, okay, Dayle, she's a mover and shaker. Oh, Scot, he's an artist. Oh, Stephen, he's a writer. And I noticed all these different languages, from the seeker to the artist to the avoider. There's these unique ways that everybody grieves. Not one way is better than the other. They're just different. And I thought remember the old book, The Five Love Languages? I thought,
Yeah.
well, if there's languages of love, there's got to be languages of grief because love and grief are brother and sister. So I created the Seven Languages of Love, and it's caught some traction, and I'm so happy it has. And I'm so humbled to be working with you all. And Scot did such a great job illustrating those seven languages in kid usable ways. I like Anyway, that's the book and that's where it came from. And I'm so glad that we're making it useful for kids too,
Yeah.
because they get
Well,
left out a lot in grief.
yeah, well, I saw you speak at Lifting the Lid festival, and that would have been 2023 then, wouldn't it? Because we then were talking, we've done Pat Chats before about your work, and then I met Lorna Vyse, who's a childhood bereavement specialist, had a Pat Chat with her. The head started swirling. It was like, okay, so we've got these languages of grief, which made total sense that we all have our different way and unique ways. I was already working with Scot at that point on Tarc the Robot, which he created. Spoke to Lorna, and Tarc is such a cute. Well, you
Yes.
talk about Tarc. So where did Tarc come from, Scot?
Tark was born out of a period of my life that ultimately I was struggling with, both, I guess, physically and emotionally. I wasn't in a good place. Life was just dealing me blow after blow. And I think what had happened was my subconscious at that point kicked in and then thought, right, what, who or what would be the perfect friend for Scot right now? Somebody that he could talk to, lean on, call up and say, hey, I've got a problem. I'm not feeling so good. And that person would always be there for them, no matter what. And I believe everybody's got a friend like that, that it doesn't matter what time of day it is or what you're going through, you can call that person up and they're there for you. My subconscious created that, created Tark. And so it helped me. But further down the line, it felt right to give Tark to the world because it felt very selfish that it was just for me. Because I thought, well, if I'm going through this, a pound to a penny, there's hundreds of millions of people going through the same thing right now as well. Maybe they would get some benefit from Tark. So I kind of put it out there just to see what would happen. Little did I realize the impact that this character would have, that I've seen people eyes light up with happiness. They buy something for a friend, or they say, "I know what this your picture has helped me because I'm going through a tough time," and I just read the words on the picture, and that helps me. I've even seen grown men reduced to tears through the pieces of art that I've created. And for me, that's that's so heartfelt that what I've created from in here and then just done this and drawn it, it has changed so many people's lives and for the better as well. And I think that's why I do this. That's why I do what I do, because I want to play some sort of part in letting people know that there's always, the sun will always shine again, even through the darkest hour. The clouds will part, the sun will shine, things will seem better. And if I can play a little part in that, I'm happy. So for me, it's Tarc all the way, and I'm just trying to push that as far and as wide as I possibly can.
Well, I saw your art on a local Facebook notice board and was dealing with obviously end of life work, saw your character and some of the words, and just thought, I need to meet that artist. So I remember it was I contacted you and just said, can I meet you for a coffee? Turns out we literally lived a village apart,
Yeah,
which was just crazy because you could have lived anywhere.
exactly.
Yeah, lived a village apart, and so we met up and spoke about Tark. And at the time, he was a lot of sort of canvas artwork that you were doing, and it needs to be digital because that way you can get that message, as you've just said, out farther and wider by creating him as a digital character. So all of the art is actually hand drawn by you, but on a digital software, isn't it? So,
That's
this is you creating it. It's not AI. You actually physically draw this with a pen on an iPad.
yeah, that's right. Is as you mentioned, yeah, each one of those is an original picture, albeit it's digital, but it is still original. And it's the same process with technology nowadays that with the iPad or any other tablet, it's done in kind of real time. There's no lag or it doesn't feel weird because it's digital. It is literally, there was a couple of times that I would draw something and I'd put it in pen, and then I was like, I need to just wait a second just to let the ink dry. But then, wait a minute, no, I'm doing it digital. It doesn't matter. So even me doing it for so long, it still tricks me. But yeah, they're all original pieces of art.
Yeah. And they were base rounds. So we then had the team because Lorna, who I'd spoken to, has already written a few books of her own. And I said, well, what if we all work together as a team? And we got a government grant to help us do this. So Lorna wrote the words after having conversations with you, Stephen, and looking at the 7 languages of sorrow that you'd created. She then wrote the words, and then basically we gave them to Scot and said, Scot, here's the words. Can you create pictures around? And I mean, one of these, I love this. I'm just going to quickly get to it. You're going to know which one I'm going to show, Scot, because I showed it yesterday or Wednesday when we were in a classroom showing the children. And of course, this has a lot of meaning to you, Scot, doesn't it? Which got into the book.
It does that Labrador there with the
H.
H on his collar right there. That's Hatch, who was my Labrador, and I had him from 8 weeks old. I mean, it's a beautiful story now. I won't go into it now because of time. But yeah, I had him from 8 weeks old. It was always just me and him. We were just best. We were father and son, but we were best buddies. He went everywhere with me. Even when I got married, um, he was my best man, and he had a little cravat and everything. So he was there. There was didn't matter what I was doing or where I was. Hatch would be there. Sadly, again, I lost him, so grief unfortunately came into my life once again. And I lost him quite suddenly. So that played a big part in kind of what I do.
I
And
think
then
with that,
yeah,
it was a nice tribute, wasn't it, to actually get
yeah,
Hatch into the book. So in the book, Hatch is a support dog. So goes in because the book is is situated in a childhood support centre, a bereavement support centre, and the children are in a support group. So Hatch is the sport dog where they can get to sort of stroke him. And in one of the pictures, in fact, a little boy is taking him for a walk. I think he's the talker, Stephen, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think on
Yeah,
that
there.
one.
Yep.
So he's actually talking to the bereavement support worker, but outside.
Yeah.
And then we've got other ways that you can actually sort of communicate, whether it's with friends out at the park or even on mobile phone these days, is part of how somebody can actually talk and want to sort of talk it through and communicate it with somebody else. So Hatch got in the book as well. And I think it wasn't the easiest, Scott, was it actually, when somebody's writing the words, it's somebody else's language, you know, you're all sort of working together to create all the imagery. But I believe that, you know, now that we have it as a finished piece, I mean, so many people are praising this work, aren't they?
100%. I always, when I draw a picture, whether it's a digital piece or it's a canvas, there's always a part that I think, well, once it's done, it's done, and I'm happy with it, or I'm not happy with it, but it's my rules. It's because I've drawn it. It is what it is. When you have different people in the mix, so the amazing work that Stephen has done and continues to do, and with the seven languages of sorrow. So once you put that into the mix, and then you've got Lorna with the story that she's created from the seven languages of sorrow, then there's me in the mix to, right, okay, visualize this world. It was a big challenge, as I say, because if it's just me, I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. But I was having to think of Stephen, am I doing right by him? I was having to think of Lorna, am I doing right by her? So it was a challenge. So it was, yeah, it did get a little bit sort of stressful for me at times because, yeah, I just wanted it right for everybody. And seeing the final the piece on the book, I couldn't be happier. I genuinely think this is a fantastic thing. Not just what I've done, but what Stephen's done, what Lorna's done, and what you done in Dayle in making all this happen anyway. I look at it and think that is the fruits of our labor. That's why we do what we do.
Well, Stephen, I mean, you've worked with children for a long time, haven't you? So of all of the scenarios in the book, but all of these languages have come from children, as you said, that you've worked with and you've experienced it. And there is one story you tell, and it'd be lovely if you're able to tell it, about where you had the child and the father and sort of the anger, and you had the anger corners.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, I got a call from a grandpa who was also a father of a daughter, and the daughter died tragically and very suddenly. She was a single mom. And so there's this young boy, he's like 8 years old, and his mom's died, and what the heck? And grandpa was just getting set to retire and move south, and now he's a father again. And there was a lot of anger because grief is just a big basket of stuff. And sometimes some of in that basket is anger. So grandpa was angry and the young boy was angry, and he's starting to beat up his friends at school just to get the energy out. So I had this idea of getting one of those punching bags for kids that has sand in the bottom so it can flip flop back and forth, and a punching bag for grandpa that he could punch like a boxer would punch. And I had them create a corner in the home that was safe for both of them. It would be like the angry corner. And so when that young boy was angry or grandpa was angry, they'd say to each other, angry corner time. And they go off to the angry corner together. And the little boy would punch the Popeye punching bag, and grandpa would punch the adult punching bag. And when they were all done, they'd sit on the couch and have a cry together. And so we used the mover and the shaker in this case to help grandpa and grandson speak a similar language of sorrow. And it worked really well for them.
Because
Right.
the thing is, it is finding a safe way to express the grief, isn't it? And I think Lorna, who's now managed to join us, hiya Lorna, Sorry
Hello.
you weren't able to join us earlier, but it was one of the things with you with the book was actually finding alternative ways that children could in fact express their grief and show what those languages were in a child-friendly language, because I think that for you is something that's so important, isn't it? Is actually making it understandable for the children that you're working with.
Absolutely. One of the greatest things about this seven languages of sorrow is that it really helps explain how children grieve. But of course, what we want to do is that's quite hard for children to understand what they are. So if you said, "Oh, you are this," or "You are that," so to give children opportunities to go, you might grieve in this way, and this is an idea of how you might want to. They'll go, "Oh, that's how I want to do something." So of course, it allows them that opportunity to understand what fits their level of grieving and what makes them feel a bit better and what helps them get those feelings and emotions out. So that's when sort of writing the book was a really good opportunity to be able to get all of those different languages in lots of different helpful tips for children.
Yeah, because what I like is where you've sort of, again, we are talking about the mover and shakers. So, okay, you've got the fact that they may want to release it through some type of physical sport. So you've got sort of dancing and moving.
They're dancing.
But
Yeah.
then you've also got over here sort of the football, the sport, or just stamping in puddles and just generally getting those feelings out. And then obviously those two were part of Tarc's helpful tips. So you did that all the way through the book, Lorna, didn't you?
Yeah, I just sort of found it was really important, and sort of I was just picking up what Stephen was saying there about anger, and using the sort of punch ball scenario. But a lot of the work that I do with children, you go, where do you feel it? Where are you feeling something in your body? And they'll say, well, I'm feeling really angry. And I go, well, but where do you feel it? And when they're talking to you, they've got their fingers clenched like this, so you know that they're feeling it in their fists, or they're stamping, and you sort of get to realize that moving is so important. But I'm a firm believer that in any of the books that I write, that we give children and young people tips to help them. So in this was sort of Tarc's helpful thoughts are really just, that's his thought process, isn't it? He really wants to make things better for children. So what he does is he says, this is some other ideas. So that's a theme that runs right the way through the book in every single section.
Yeah. And then at the end, you actually have it where there is the whole section, and each one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
So each of them actually does another sort of helpful tip at the end.
Yeah, that's one of the things for me is, you're writing a story, you're writing chapters, and each chapter obviously sort of corresponds with one of the languages of sorrow. But one of the things you want to do at the end, especially with a children's book, is because they tend to pick it up and put it down, is have that summary. So I felt it was really important at the back of the book to go, okay, so here's 7 more little ideas and a refresh of what the story is about, but in one page, it's a double page, so that adults might sit with the child, or child might just go, well, what would work for me? And that's the most important thing for me. I really love that part of the book, because I think it really just it does that whole summary for them. And you know what, children might feel one thing one day and one thing another. So the idea is they can jump about, and those thoughts can be whatever they're feeling that particular day as well, which is so important.
Yeah. But also children and the thing is adults as well. I mean, adults are being educated when they read this to their children. I mean, it is set for an age of children who are able to read at sort of year 6 to 8 and above. But equally, we all know that when adults read this, they're going to be educated at the same time, which again is something so important that was the intention with the book, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the intention with all of my books, really, because it's okay to support children who are grieving, or through death, dying, loss, serious illness, all of those things. But actually, the most important way of supporting them is with communication with adults that help them, give them information. So if we have information in books that allows an adult to go, I'm out of my depth here because this hasn't happened, and I'm feeling all of these things as well, because the bereavement may have impacted on them in similar or different ways. If we can give them tools via a book to go, okay, I'm not quite sure how my child is coping with this, but this book is going to allow me to explore it and also give me some tips of things that I might discuss with them, then that's perfect. Yesterday, which is why I've been running around a bit today, Yesterday I was at a Dying Matters event, so it's just the start of the UK Dying Matters week, and I was able to gift some of the books to some of the organisations that work with children and young people at the start of the day, and I was chatting to them towards the end of the day and going, "Have you had a look? What do you think?" And I loved the amount of adults that said to me, "Wow, I can see myself reading this to children, but equally I'm learning as I go." And that's exactly what every book should be, isn't it? It's about learning and making sure that people have the tools when everything else might feel really difficult. Other things might feel, a little overwhelming, but books like this give you nice, easy language to go, okay, let's explore.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
think Scott and I, on Wednesday of this week, we went into a local school, and the children there were year 6, so age 10 and 11. There were 25 children in the classroom. And it was really nice because it started with Scott. Actually, you did a workshop, Scott, didn't you? And then we spoke to the children about the book.
Yeah. Yeah, the workshop started off simply by introducing Tarc, explaining who he is, what he is, why he is, and then a fun little part where I describe Tarc, and then get the children involved, and then say, okay, well, what words do you come up with when you think of Tarc? And it's always completely different. Some take me by surprise, some genuinely make me laugh. And so we write them all down, and it's all about just getting the kids involved, because when you start matching words and phrases with a piece of art, it suddenly becomes even bigger than what it is. Or even if you write a phrase, then you can visualize, well, what does that phrase look like as a picture? So you're kind of tackling it from both sides. And that's what I get the kids involved in. But then, yeah, then we kind of moved a nice segue into talking about the book and why the book is so important.
And it was really quite a smooth transition into the book, and
Yeah.
we put over obviously a difficult topic, but in a fun way. And I think that they were really engaging, Scott, weren't we? Even when we were showing them about the book and asking them questions over, do you understand what grief is, and have you ever grieved, and have you sort of anybody has died, or you've lost anything that was very dear to you. And we were going through the different languages, but through the pages of the book, and most of them could actually engage with different elements of the book, couldn't they?
Well, that's right. Even though the book is obviously aimed at children and the subject matter, you have to do it, I guess, kind of child friendly and not dumb it down, because kids aren't dumb. They're very astute. But when we were talking, I said, well, when you were talking and explaining about certain things, they were so switched on. They knew, like they knew about, okay, what is this word? Do you know what grief is? And they were able to articulate what grief was and what it actually means. And so then when you spoke about, well, these are the different characteristics, or the seven languages, the kids' hands were in the air, and yeah, that's me, and I do this and I do that. Oh, I do that too. And it was suddenly you could like it was like light bulbs had gone off, like they were zoned in what was going on. So as much as thinking, oh, we got to do this kind of kid friendly, we really didn't need to. It could be like, oh, this is what it is, and they knew, the kids knew, they're not silly.
And I think that's also, you just said, and it was there, oh, I know that too. And again, as you say, Stephen, you don't just sit with one language, do you? They do blend in together, and they can change over time.
100%, and the object of the book, from my perspective, was to help people become multilingual in their grief. So that, if Lorna's a talker and Scott's an artist and Dayle, you're a mover and a shaker and I'm an avoider, we all notice our different styles and we validate them. I don't say to Dayle, no, that's not it. You got to talk like Lorna. It's a way of letting people know how unique each language is, and that it's okay to grieve that way too. Because when I think about a symphony, like if there's only like a violin in a symphony, that's a little boring. But if you had a drum and a trumpet and a trombone and a flute, wow, the richness of the music is even more.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
And to
I
be
think there's a
honest,
sort of bit of
Lorna,
a,
you
sorry,
brought
Dale,
it.
I was going to say there's a bit of a theory there as well in terms of, not least about how children puddle jump. And they're only able to stay in their grief and extreme pain of grief for very short bursts of time, especially sort of younger children, whereas adults can sort of linger there a bit more, can't they? So one of the good things is where children sort of puddle jump, 1 minute they might be playing, the next minute they might be stomping, and then the next minute they'll be back playing, and then they'll be out crying. And so that puddle jumping bit, I think, really reflects quite beautifully in the sort of multilingual sort of element that you're talking about. And one other thing, Dale, that you mentioned earlier, just about ages, I think one of the things, although we were sort of targeting an age when we were writing it, I sort of, like my other books, people say, well, what age is this for? And I don't always like to say an age. I like to say primary, it's aimed at primary school, because I think it sort of covers so many different ages that if you're not careful, you sort of pigeonhole it into an age and people go, oh, that's not for my child then. And that's not the case either.
Yeah, well, we decided not to put an age on it when we actually printed it, didn't we? For that reason, because again, it also depends on reading levels and comprehension ability. There's so many factors go into reading anything. But all I was going to say before you started speaking about the puddle jumping, Lorna, was how well you actually brought everything together into a story that literally does have a start, a middle, and an end, and you just did it so beautifully. And I can remember the first read through when you came on, and it was the first time we'd all heard it, and you read it through, and we all just went, "Wow, yeah, that's brilliant." And you were like, "Okay, but that's my first draft," and we were like, "Yeah, it's great.
That'll
We
do.
love it."
I mentioned that to somebody yesterday, and I said it was just, we were talking about reading aloud, because actually reading aloud as well as just reading is so important, isn't it? And I was going, yeah, I remember the first time that I read it. I said, and the people on screen and nobody said anything and just went, wow. And I was like, okay, I think we're on track.
But we were on track, and between the four of us, and to be honest, we can't finish this pat chat without actually mentioning the other people. They are mentioned in the book. And some you worked with Lorna independently without the rest of the team, but Jen Garside, who actually did the typesetting and graphic designing and put all this together, I have to admit, and there's the back cover, she did a beautiful job of the layout. And then we ended up with, I say ended up with because we had a little switch round, but we've had Rachel, I'm just trying to think of a surname. We had
Woodward
Andrea
Carrick.
G, we had Rachel, and I'm thinking, is it Carrick Woodward, or have I got that the wrong way
I think it's the other way around. Woodward Carrick.
Woodward Carrick, yes. So sorry, I'd got it quite wrong. So, and we also had Andrea G working on it. But of course, we also had a special person, be wrong to miss him out, who also worked on the book. So would you like to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, so this is my great nephew, Albert, who is 9 years old. And you spoke about sort of trying to put that story together. And I think one of the things for me is I absolutely understood Tarc, because Scot and I, and Dayle, we'd had a really good conversation. Stephen and Dayle, we'd had this conversation about the 7 languages. And my job as the author was to try and put Tarc in with these languages and make that for a children's audience. And so there was a part there I was really trying to think about the little bit that would weave it all together, because that's the whole point in a book. And I'd got these thoughts in my head, and I was thinking, I'm not sure that would work. And then I had another thought, I'm not sure that would work. So I had a really good chat to Albert, and said, Albert, there's this little robot called Tarc, and this is what he does, and this is what I'm trying to do. And he just sat there with me. And he'd go, well, we could say, and I think, no, Tarc doesn't speak. And he's like, right. So me and him sort of had a little time together, and he sparked lots of different ideas. And then when I came back to him and said, I'd really like the thoughts to go out into the world, and he said, they can go out of the window. And I'm like, yeah, we've got it sussed between us. So sometimes your best critics and your best buddies in writing things are children themselves.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful to Albert, because he really gripped that. I mean, to be fair, he does get asked quite a lot of my books to sort of come up with a sort of thought process or have a look at an illustration, and his older brother and sister. But he really got into this because he loved Tarc and just loved the whole concept. So when Scott was doing some of the pictures and I'd show them, he became the biggest critic in the most positive way. So I'd go back to Scott and go, yeah, but Albert doesn't really like this. And then we'd have to go, okay, we're looking through the eyes of a 9-year-old here. But I think all of his comments along the way really did help hone that first draft and how we processed. And I love the fact that I'm just about to go into his school and present a copy to him in his school assembly, which he doesn't know about yet.
Oh,
So hopefully he
amazing.
won't see this
Oh,
just yet. So
that's
that would be
lovely.
really, really nice, because I'm a firm believer as well to involve young people in as much as possible to get their voices is so important. So thank you for his mention. He will be chuffed. And I have shown you guys a really lovely photo of him, haven't I, where he's smiling like a Cheshire cat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I wanted to, again, appreciate that there was a whole team all worked on the book and we're all so proud of it. And I think it was lovely to do the patch up, but it would have been wrong not to let you have that mention of Albert, who, again, we all appreciated his input because it did take everybody. And it was an interesting project. It was 5 months start to finish. There was a lot of hours went into it, but what we have and what we've all achieved together has been fantastic. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
there we go. So this is it. It is Tarc the Robot. I keep having my head sticking around the side. It's Tarc the Robot. And this book is £8.95. It can be purchased on the website, tarctherobot.com. Or you could contact myself or Scott, or in fact, Lorna or Stephen online, and we will organise copies for you. But it's £8.95. And to be honest, we think that's fantastic value for what somebody can get from this book, because it really does explain how we all grieve differently. It says what it does on the title. So thank you for having the Pat Chat, everybody. I will
Thank you.
put our details up at the end of it.
Thank you.
Awesome.